Let's start, Clinton, the big one, the game of the week, the game that everyone has been waiting for since the last one ended. 12 o'clock, noon Eastern time on Fox, Texas at Ohio State. A rematch of last year's national semifinal game. So, Clinton is the resident Ohio State fan of this podcast. What are your keys to the game? What are you looking for in this game? What do you think is going to decide this game?
ITP game of the week. I gave some keys for both teams, and starting with Texas, I think it's Arch Manning living up to the hype that especially ESPN and guys like Paul Feinbaum have put on him all offseason. It is almost like he is a quarterback god, and he has 2 starts under his belt. But Texas, as we saw, where against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl last year, kind of struggled in the run game, which is something they did really well with last year. And I think their ability to potentially utilize Arch Manning's legs in this game could really be the game breaker or game changer. Against Ohio State in key situations, you're in a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3, Arch can take off. So Ohio State's really going to have to be aware of that and keep contained. The other thing for Arch in this game is Ohio State's returning a fair amount in their secondary, pretty much. Well, guys with experience is what they're returning. So he needs to take care of the ball. Then on the other side, if you're looking at Texas's defense, Julian Sayin, first-time starter, they need to get pressure on him. They cannot let him sit there and just play pass with the array of weapons that he has. We know Smith, we know Tate, we know Ennis, we know Claire, just about in everything. Texas did a really good job in the Cotton Bowl last year of limiting Jeremiah Smith. So can they do that again? But they can't just sell out for him. They've got to pay attention to the other weapons. And then if you're looking at Ohio State, the offensive line comes back. You're missing 2 guys who went in the draft this year, but they're bringing back a lot of experience. And one of those being center Carson Hinsman, who has a full season and a half of starting under his belt. So nothing better than to lead your offensive line with an experienced center. But they've got to slow down the Texas defensive line and pass rush, most notably Colin Simmons. There we go, Kirk. Brewdog, wingman, IPA. Thanks for being our wingman tonight, Kirk. And then Ohio State needs to be creative on offense. You got to find ways to get Smith open. If he is your best player, you cannot just let Texas erase him the entire time. Then my last piece is Julian Sayin, rely on Max Clare, feed him in the middle of the field. He will get open. Ryan, anything from you?
I'm curious to see the Texas edge rushers against the Ohio State offensive line in this one. I think that's going to be a key matchup, particularly with the young quarterback. If you're Ohio State, you want to give him time. You want to keep him clean early in the game. If you're new play caller, offensive coordinator, Brian Hartline, you probably want to call some quicker shots, get your quarterback some easy reads to get him into the game, get him a little bit comfortable, and give him an opportunity to get his feet under him before getting his face knocked in for the first time by Colin Simmons and Ant Hill and all of the other big scary dudes that Texas has on their side. For Texas in this one, I think it's important to get out to a fast start. Not necessarily saying you got to get out to a big early lead or anything like that, but kind of given how last year's game played out, how last year's game ended, Ohio State's not going to be scared of you in this one. Even though they're turning over a lot on this team, they have the home field advantage. Say what you want about the noon atmosphere, yada, yada, yada. That's still going to be a juice crowd that is celebrating unveiling the national title banner at Ohio Stadium. So they're going to be itching, ready to go. They're probably going to be a little peeved that this game is at noon. They're going to be a little salty. How is Arch Manning in his first really difficult start going to be, right? He's got starting experience, but it's against a couple G5 teams. I'm curious to see how the Texas offense attacks this game differently than they did a year ago. I think it's a strange situation they find themselves in where they're replacing a 3-year starting quarterback, a guy who was a former number 1 overall recruit. And I think you can make an argument that they got better at the quarterback position, just given the different profile between the 2 guys, right? Like by senior year, Quinn Ewers, he had been a beaten up man, right? Multiple injuries throughout his career. He was not very mobile in the pocket. That's a completely different look that you're getting if you're Ohio State in this game from Arch Manning. And you didn't really get that in the game last year, right? He had the one play where he got his bell rung, he fumbled the football, and he probably got a concussion from that, or mild concussion, and that's why he didn't come back in, or he didn't come back in because he fumbled. But anyway, he only got that look really 1 or 2 times last year. I can't remember if they ended up doing it twice. So completely different look, completely different play caller, right? How does Matt Patricia adjust to being a defensive play caller at the college level? I think there's a lot of fascinating aspects to this game from the Ohio State side, and ultimately the hype too, right? There's always steam on Ohio State, but I think most people are understandably expecting them to take a small step back, and that's all relative, right? Like, unless you win a national title again, you're going to take a little bit of a step back.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all the losses that Texas had, there doesn't seem to be that same expectation. There's a lot of hype on the Manning name. There's a lot of hype on what they're bringing back. I think Texas has some question marks at the receiver position. They're not bringing back a ton of experience. I like Ryan Wingo a lot. The Emmett Mosley transfer from Stanford's an interesting one, but they're putting a lot on a guy who didn't have, I mean, he was good last year, but again, completely different stage, completely different offense, completely different set of expectations. So I'm interested to see how this Texas passing attack looks with a different style of quarterback and one who certainly has a ton of hype on him.
And it's definitely looking at their offensive line as well. I believe in the summer months they lost their potential starting right tackle for the season. I just got word today that the left tackle just had a recent surgery on his hand and will be playing with a cast for the entire game. And Texas is looking to be rotating their left guard throughout the entire game because they don't have a true starter there just yet.
Seems like a bad idea.
Absolutely. And Ohio State does not have the 4 guys who started the game on the D-line last year for them to generate the pressure. But you're walking into what is going to be, call it what it is, a hornet's nest in the shoe. Yes, it's a big noon kickoff. Fans are irritated by that. But this is game number 1 of the year. It's a big game. They're going to be loud. This is not big noon at the shoe with Purdue. They will be loud. They will be rowdy. Can the offensive line be able to handle that? Texas runs on the clap, which a lot of teams do, right? We saw Indiana go into the shoe last year and really struggle with getting their snaps, and you heard the center talk about it at the end of the season. Just the volume down on the field, it's really hard for them to communicate. So it'll be a big adjustment for Texas. And just kind of last point, to the point that I figured you would bring up that you did, is the coordinators, right? New offensive coordinator, Brian Hartline truly steps into the role in this game. How much is Day's confidence in him if something gets a little hairy in this game? We all know that whether it's a defensive or offensive-minded coach, if they're at the head coach, they will make the choice on what play they truly want to be ran, regardless of the coordinator. But if Hartline gets in some dicey situations, how much does Day want to lean in on that? And then the same thing with Patricia. You know, he hasn't been at the collegiate level. I think he left Syracuse 20-plus years ago. So it's been a long time. He's got a ton of weapons to utilize on defense. We'll see how he does.
I'm leaning Texas outright in this game. I discussed that a little bit in our playoff predictions. There's a lot of unknown in this. I'm going with the slightly more certainty with the Steve Sarkisian offense. I think I might have been the solid verbal that brought this point up. Last time Brian Hartline was technically Ohio State's offensive coordinator was the Kyle McCord year, and that was not a fantastic offense by Ohio State standards. I know he wasn't the play caller, but guy who's in a little bit more in charge in the offense. Last year they bring in the experience of Chip Kelly, and I wonder, especially early in the season, how much they miss that offensive mastermind. He knew how to call a game, and we have not seen that from Brian Hartline. We've never seen him call a game. We don't know how he's going to respond to that. We don't know what his feel for the game is going to be. He could be fantastic at it, and Ohio State could very well win this game, and it would not surprise me. But I'm going to go with the slight more certainty at the play caller position. Maybe a little bit more certainty at the quarterback position, just given that we've seen Arch Manning play before, even though it hasn't been against fantastic competition. But I'm a soft lean to Texas, but it's not a high confidence pick.
This week and last week, I feel like I've been back and forth, but I feel like it sounded like I've leaned Texas. And coming through tonight, I'm going to pick Ohio State minus 1.5. I think the home environment gets to the offensive line a little bit. I think maybe Ohio State's defense forces Arch into some type of turnover late that allows Ohio State to go down the field, and Julian Sayin helps lead a game-winning drive that gets Ohio State the win.